from the tab. No? So anyway, so this is income taxation. No? So this is as what we all know, there are four major types of national taxes. Okay, number one is income tax. Okay, number two is business tax. Third is transfer tax, and the fourth one is the documentary stamp tax. So income tax is usually again a tax no on on a certain type of income. So every time the taxpayer earns income that is subject to income taxes. So kailan ba magkaka-earn ng income no yung taxpayer? When we talk about income, that would mean an increase in wealth. Okay, that is an increase in wealth. Okay, any increase in wealth that will be considered as an increase in income, increase in wealth, increase your capacity, okay, to do something, and therefore that is considered as an income. Okay, sige. So anyways, again, this is the review on income taxation. Because our topic outline, usually the topic outline that I use even in the undergrad, no, for the para mas maintindihan natin at saka mas ma-appreciate natin yung concept, okay, ng taxes, no, or ng specific tax that we are discussing is we always follow the tax model. Okay, the tax model is usually found in the tax returns pertaining to that taxes. No, kung ano yung tax returns na ginagamit natin, yan din po yung ating tax returns, no? Or yan din po yung ating tax model na tinatawag. Okay? So, the our topic outline would be the income tax model for income taxation. Okay, we have here the gross income less allowable deductions. Okay, then you have your net taxable income. Then you have your apply your tax rate. Then your income tax due less your tax credit, if any, and then your income tax still due and payable. For us to understand deeper, okay, the on how to compute your taxes, because at the end of this session, our goal really is for us to compute our income tax still due and payable. Okay, what is our income tax still due and payable? That is computed by following this income tax model, or we usually call this one as our tax formula. Okay, so we have our gross income less the allowable deductions, that with the net there will be your taxable income. Then you apply your tax rate for you to compute your income tax due, okay, and deduct any tax credit available so that you can determine how much will be remitted or how much will be paid to the Bureau of Internal Revenue as your income tax still due and payable. So, in gross income, okay, we have three types of gross income. Now, we have income subject to final tax. Okay, we have income that is exempt from taxes, and we also have basic no, taxes. Can you say exempt? Obviously, these are the taxes that is not taxable, and therefore that is not included in the computation of our income tax due or income tax still due and payable. So if you will be asked how much is the gross income, gross taxable income do not include, okay, those items that are considered as exempted. Okay, hindi kasali yung mga exempt income natin. Okay? How about yung final at saka yung basic taxes? The difference between final and basic taxes will be elaborated later on, no, as we move forward with our discussion. Okay, less allowable deductions. Okay, and then we have two types of allowable deductions. That is the OSD, or the optional. No, this is the optional standard deduction, and the itemized deduction. Okay, discussin natin yan mamaya, yung OSD at saka yung ating itemized deductions. Then, you have your net taxable income, you get your tax rate, then your income tax due. The computation of the income tax due will depend now on the taxpayer. Sino ba yung taxpayer natin? Okay? Important din yan, no? Usually the start of income taxation, we usually need to, no, dapat natin get to know you, or JTKY activity with our taxpayers. Sino yung ating mga taxpayers? Are they the individuals, corporation, partnership, estates, and trusts? Okay? So ito yung grupo natin according to the tax code. According to the tax code, okay, the following are considered as persons. Ang sabi ng tax code noon, persons. Sino yung mga persons according to the tax code? We have the individual, corporation, estates, and trust. Apat lang yon, no? Apat lang yung considered natin na persons, okay, in taxation according to the tax code. And these persons are the taxable entities. Okay, the taxable entities, again, individual, corporation, partnership, estate, and trust. Okay? So bakit hindi bakit hindi kasali, no? Bakit hindi kasali si partnership doon sa type of persons? Because partnership can be classified as a corporation if it is an ordinary partnership, or it is not taxable but taxable on the individual capacity, no, of the individual capacity of the partners, no, ng GPP. Okay, if it's a general professional partnership. Okay. So sa atin din, we have, isa-isahin natin yan, no, sa pag-discuss yung ating mga corporation, ay yung ating mga how to compute the taxes for individuals, partnership, okay, corporations, estate, at saka trust. Okay? So now let's focus on, so yung flow natin, no, before we end, okay, for the next 2 hours maybe, okay, our goal there is to really compute your income tax still due and payable, and hopefully can give you tips, no, on how you can easily, no, detect, okay, on how detect, no, the items that you need to consider and you need to exclude in the computation of taxes or whatever is given or is required in your exams. Okay. Okay. So let's now focus on gross income. So gross income, as what I've said, it is basic, final, or exempt. Again, walang problema sa exempt, na exempt income natin kasi yun nga po ay not taxable. So when we compute our income tax due or even our income tax payable or still due, okay, we will not include those items that are considered as exempt. Okay. Now, it is very important for us to differentiate basic and final taxes. Itong dalawa. Okay? Ano ba pinagkaiba ng basic at saka final taxes? Because when you notice, in the discussion of gross income, pinapaulit-ulit yan, no? Subject to basic, subject to final, or exempt. Okay? Exempt, walang problema, alam na natin, no? But when we say subject to basic or subject to final taxes, ano po ba? Ano po ba yung ibig sabihin? Ano po ba yung ibig sabihin niyan if it is subject to basic or final taxes? Okay? We can understand the concept of basic and um, we can understand the concept of basic and final taxes if now we know the concept of withholding taxes. Okay, we have to know the concept of withholding taxes, and there are two types of withholding taxes. That is the creditable withholding tax and the final withholding taxes. We have to know the nature, okay, of these two withholding taxes for us to understand also better, no, the concept of gross income subject to basic or gross income subject to final taxes. Okay? Now, when we say an income is subject, ano ba yung, before that, ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng withholding? Paano ba yung withholding system natin? Okay, the withholding, the withholding tax, the withholding tax system natin dito sa ating income tax system in the Philippines. Now, for example, A, okay, sells goods, no, of 100 pesos to B. Okay, B will pay A. Okay, B will pay A 100 pesos minus 10. So ang babayaran na lang ni B doon kay A is only 90 pesos. Yung 10 pesos dito is considered as a withholding tax. Okay? So sino ang dapat mag-withhold ng taxes? It must be the income payer, kung sino yung magbabayad ng income ng ibang party. So in this case B is the income payer. Okay? So magbabayad siya ng 100 pesos doon kay A, but according to BIR, dapat daw mag-withhold si B ng 10%. So yung 10 pesos i-withhold ni B, so ang ibabayad niya na lang kay A would be 90 pesos. Okay, 90 pesos. So yung 10 pesos, withhold niya, and in that case, B also has the responsibility not to remit the 10 pesos to the Bureau of Internal Revenue as a withholding agent. No? So ang tawag dito kay B is the withholding agent. Okay. Now, paano natin siya mako-connect doon sa basic tax at saka final taxes? Paano natin siya mako-connect doon sa basic tax at saka final taxes? Well, those income that is subject to final tax is also subject to final withholding taxes. Again, those income subject to final tax is also subject to final withholding taxes. So before we receive or upon receipt of the income, and that income is subject to final taxes, the amount that we receive is already presumed to be net of taxes. And that tax being deducted by the income payer is already considered as final. When you say final, meaning it is not subject further to any other taxes. Okay, it's not subject to any further income taxes. Therefore, once natanggap nyo yan, okay, once natanggap nyo yan, it is already net, no, of all the taxes. Wala ka nang babayaran kasi nga yan po ay final, no? Ang na-withhold na tax diyan ay final na. You will not be required to pay any other taxes. So ang tanong ko diyan, yun bang mga income na sinasabi nating subject to final taxes, should it be included or excluded in our income tax model? Balik tayo sa ating income tax model. 'Di ba? Ito yung ating income tax model. Pasensya na lang sa annotation diyan, no? Ito yung ating income tax model. Ang tanong ko, yun bang income subject to final taxes, should it be included in our income tax model? Yes or no? No? Tignan ko lang yung mga reaction ninyo. Can you see a thumbs up if it is a yes, then a heart sign if it is a no? Konti lang nagre-react dito. Makatulog kayo, ano ba? Again, yung income ba subject to final taxes, should it be included in our income tax model or should it be excluded? I want to see a thumbs up if you think it is included, okay? Or a heart sign if it is excluded. Okay, I hope I can see more reactions or participation so that I would know, no? Okay, so well, most of those who reacted, no, gave me a heart emoji. So meaning they say that it should be a no. So therefore, they believe that, okay, if the item of income is subjected to final taxes, it will be excluded in the income tax model, and that is correct. Okay? Kasi nga, yung income na subject to final tax is already subject to final withholding taxes. Therefore, it cannot be subjected further to any other taxes. So, wag mo na siyang isali doon sa ating income tax model kasi pag sinali mo siya sa ating income tax model, it will be taxed more than one. It can be taxed more than 1K or more than once, no? Or 'di ba? Kasi nga tanggap natin siya net of taxes na 'yan. Okay? Net of taxes na 'yan. 'Di ba? So pag sinabi sa income tax model, going back to our income tax model, remember that in the income tax model, we will compute the income tax still due and payable, 'di ba? Kung kasali pa yan sa gross income natin, okay, we will compute the income tax due that's already no, inconsistent with the principle that we have discussed earlier that it should not be taxed again because it is already been subjected to final withholding taxes and that tax withheld is already the tax. Okay, so if you will be asked how much is the gross taxable income or the net taxable income, do not include those income subject to final taxes. Again, if you will be asked how much is the income or the net taxable income or the gross taxable income, do not include those income that is subject to final taxes. Okay? Am I clear? Can I see a again thumbs up if that concept is clear? That concept is very, very important no, in income taxation. I always tell my students you cannot really survive income taxation if you have not understood okay that simple concept of basic and final taxes. Kasi pag nagkapatuloy tayo, sinasabi natin dito subject to final, subject to basic, and nalilito na kayo, no? So dapat muna natin intindihin ano ba yung ibig sabihin? Ano ba yung ibig sabihin when we say subject yan to final or subject yan to basic taxes? Again, I repeat, if the income is subject to final tax, it is therefore subject to final withholding tax. So upon receipt of the income, the taxes were already withheld and the taxes withheld is already the final tax. Therefore, that income will not be taxed again. Okay? That is income subject to final taxes. Now, when we say, how about gross income that is subject to basic tax? Okay, let me explain yung income that is subject to basic taxes. Okay, the income is subject to basic tax. Going back to our income tax model, ito po yung paraan to compute the basic taxes. Okay, ito po yung paraan to compute the basic taxes. Therefore, the items included in the income tax model, okay, when you'll be asked how much is the gross taxable income or how much is the net taxable income, that will only include those income subject to basic taxes. Okay? That's income subject to basic taxes. Now, anong connection nito dito sa ating creditable withholding taxes? Okay, anong connection nan ngayon sa creditable withholding taxes? Okay, the principle here is this. Those income subject to basic tax may be subject to creditable withholding taxes. Again, those income subject to basic tax may be subject to creditable withholding taxes. Hindi siya always compared doon sa income na subject to final tax. Sabi natin, always subject to final withholding tax. But if the income is subject to basic tax, sabi natin, it may be subject to creditable withholding taxes. Now, ano ibig sabihin ng creditable withholding taxes? When the term itself creditable, it is just considered as an advance tax payment. Okay? Advance tax payment pa lang yan. Hindi pa lang yan yung tax. Yan pa lang ay advance tax payment natin. So therefore, since it is an advance tax payment, we will deduct it to the correct total basic taxes. So when we go back to the income tax model, in our gross income, the entire, going back here to our example no, dito, okay, part of the gross income would be 100 pesos. Okay, part yan ng gross income na 100 pesos. Then less allowable deduction, you can get your net taxable income. Compute the taxes there, you can get your income tax due. So ang tanong dyan, saan papasok ang 10 pesos na withholding tax dito? Again, saan papasok ang 10 pesos na withholding tax dito? Anyone? Saan papasok ang where do we recognize the 10 pesos withholding tax? Okay, that is correct. No? Some of your friends here answered tax credit. So remember the tax credit, di ba? Burahin natin dito ha. Okay. So remember in our income tax model, okay, delete natin to. Okay. Okay, remember the income tax model, meron tayong income tax due dyan. Okay, we will deduct the income tax credit. And one of the income tax credit would be any taxes paid. Okay? Any taxes paid. Okay? So kasali dyan sa income tax credit yung ating withhold na creditable withholding taxes. As what I've said, no, yung ating creditable withholding taxes is just an advance tax payment. It's not yet the final tax, which is as compared to, okay, as compared to the fine as compared to final withholding taxes. Okay? Tayo na siya mabura. For a while, ha? Okay. Okay. Now let's go to the golden rules in income taxation. Okay, this golden rules is not found in any book. So this is just my own rules. Okay, that is based on my observation and based on my experience now in income taxation. These are considered as golden rules because as income tax students, you have to know these rules. Okay, you have to know these rules. These are very important, okay, when you solve or when we proceed with our discussion on income taxation. Okay, number one, RCs and DCs are taxable on their worldwide income. So when we say RC is a resident citizen. Okay, itong RC, this is a resident, citizen. Okay, and DC are the domestic corporations. So resident citizens and domestic corporations are taxable on their worldwide income. So meaning their income within and outside the Philippines will be taxable here in the Philippines if they are resident citizens and domestic corporations. Remember that for individual, we classify them based on residency. So we have a resident, okay, we also have an alien. Okay? And then yung ating resident are further classified, no? As resident, sorry, citizen pala. Citizen at saka alien. Yung citizen naman further classified as resident or non-resident citizen. Alien naman, resident alien or non-resident alien. At saka yung non-resident alien is further classified as engaged in trade or business or not engaged in trade or business. Okay? So, pero sa ating sino lang ba yung subject to income or I mean sino ba yung sa kanila that their worldwide income is subject to basic taxes or subject to taxes here in the Philippines. These are the income if received by a resident citizen and a domestic corporation. Okay, a resident citizen and a domestic corporation. All other taxpayers, meaning ito silang non-resident citizen, okay, itong ating resident alien, okay, non-resident alien, engaged in trade or business, or not engaged in trade or business, they are taxable only on their income within the Philippines. Okay, they are taxable only on their income within the Philippines. Okay, questions so far? Do you have any questions so far on those items that we have discussed so far? Or we are all good? O parang ako nasa lecture class ko, walang nagsasalita.
Wala naman po, sir.
Okay, that's good. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's go now to the second rule that I have here. I said here NRA NETB, again NRA NETB and NRFC's income are always subject to 25% final taxes. So when you say NRA NETB or non-resident alien not engaged in trade or business, okay, and NRFC or non-resident foreign corporation, no, income are always subject, always, no, but this is again the general rule. There's always an exception to the general rule, subject to 25% final taxes. So therefore, kayong palang mga NRA, NETB at saka mga NRFC, yung income nila from the Philippines will always be subject to 25% final taxes. So as a final tax, it will be withheld by their income where they're Filipino income payer here in the Philippines, and then what the NRA, NETB, and the NRFC will receive would only be the amount net of the final taxes. Okay, net of the withholding taxes because again, it is withheld at finality. Okay? So pag meron kayong problem, tatanungin doon how much is income subject to basic or how much is the gross taxable income of an individual. And again, that individual is an NRA, NETB, or NRFC. All income within the Philippines will be subject to 25% final taxes. Okay? Next is all passive income except rent are subject to final taxes. Okay, they say when you say passive income, wala kang gagawin, no, to earn. You don't need to do anything, okay, to earn the income. Okay, so therefore, when it comes to paying taxes, you will also not do anything in paying taxes. Okay, wala ka nang ginawa, no, para to earn that income. So wala ka na pa rin gagawin just to pay your taxes because most of the passive income are subject to final taxes. Again, most of the passive income is subject to final taxes. Therefore, when you receive it, taxes already withheld, you are not responsible to pay, no, any other taxes after that. Okay? Except rent. Kasi dati, in the traditional meaning of passive income, kasali si rent. Na kasi nga 'di ba si rent, pwede naman tayo sabi nga pag say passive income, pwede kang matulog diyan buong araw, meron kang 10 million pesos sa bangko, nag-earn naman 'yon ng ilang thousands of pesos every year. So, fine with me. No, wala na akong gagawin pa because again, the income is already flowing. So when I pay my taxes anymore, wala ka na rin palang gagawin. But nowadays, rent is not considered as a passive income. Kasi hindi ka naman pwedeng matulog na lang dyan na wala kang gagawin, eh meron ka pa ring rent. No? Baka kaya pag pagising mo, okay, wala na yung rent, wala na yung lessee mo, tsaka at the same time, sira-sira na yung mga gamit mo, wala nang maintenance yung building mo. Okay? Yun, no? So therefore, it is now considered as an active income. Hindi na siya passive income. Kasi may gagawin ka na just for you to earn that income. Okay? Just for you to earn that income. So that is all passive income except rent are subject to final taxes. Now, all income from foreign sources are always subject to basic taxes. Okay? Hindi siya pwede mag-final tax doon sa kanyang income from foreign sources. And this rule number 1, 2, 3, 4. Rule number 4, it only applies to resident citizens and domestic corporations. Again, who can explain to me why? Bakit applicable lang yan sa resident citizens at saka sa domestic corporations? Okay, anyone?
Sir, ako po.
Yes, please.
Kasi po yung resident citizens and domestic corporation lang po yung taxable sa income from within and without po.
Correct, no? So, yung magkaka-income lang, yung mga taxable lang on their foreign sources are only the resident citizens and domestic corporations as stated in General Rule, the first bullet here, no? In the General Rules in Income Taxation. Therefore, hindi talaga possible, no? It's not really possible na um, magkaka-income yung iba, no, from foreign sources. Pero bakit subject daw palagi to basic tax? Bakit daw subject palagi to basic taxes? Okay, anyone? Bakit subject palagi to basic taxes? Hindi siya pwedeng final tax, no? Even a passive income earned from foreign sources, why is it subject to basic taxes?
Hello po, pwede po sumagot?
Yes po, sure. Yes, please.
Hindi ko pa alam kung pero siguro po kasi hindi pa na-withheld yun ng foreign taxes yung ibabayad para po sa na
Mhm.
according po sa Philippine
Yeah,
government.
that is yes, that is correct. No? The direction there is correct, no? Because that remember was what I've said earlier, that final taxes or those income subject to final taxes should be subject or always subject to final withholding taxes. But take note that these are foreign sources. Sino ngayong dapat mag-withhold ng taxes? Di ba si income payer? So sinong income payer dito? These are foreign sources. So meaning foreign companies or foreigners ang mag-withhold nito. Question dyan, can the Philippine government impose to these foreigners, no, that they should withhold taxes in behalf of the Philippine government? No, pwede ba yan ganyan? The answer there is no, because it is already beyond, no, the Philippine situs. That's already beyond the jurisdiction of the Philippine government to collect, no, taxes or to impose from the those entities outside, okay, the Philippine situs, no, para mag-withhold ng taxes. Okay? That is, no, the golden rules in income taxation. So please, no, please be familiar, no, of these rules, because okay, most of the concepts in income taxation will only revolve in this area. Okay, so this is the basic. At least if you know the basic foundation, no, of that course, everything all else will follow. Because in case that you will forget it, no, on how, do not memorize, do not memorize there. In case you forget it, you have something to go back because you have understood it. Okay? Okay, kung memorize lang kasi pag mental block tayo, patay tayo dyan, no? But if we understand, okay, if naintindihan natin yung problem, madali na lang yan kasi hindi yan siya hindi yan siya tawag nito, hindi yan siya how do you call this one? Hindi yan siya balakid, no? In case that there is a mental block, because we understood the concept. We give rational, we give reasons, no, for the treatment of these cases. Okay? These are the golden rules in income taxation. Okay. Let's now go to gross income, no, as defined in the tax code. Okay, according to the tax code, no, gross income are all income derived from whatever source, okay, including but not limited to the following. So what is important here is all income. Sabi dito, all income from whatever source. Okay, all income from whatever source. Ano ibig sabihin ng all income from whatever source? Okay, meaning from all sources, may it be legal or illegal sources natin that is considered as part of gross income. Pero wala naman siguro magde-declare diyan, no, ng halimbawa wala naman mag-declare siguro ng income from hold upping, no? Or income from, ang tawag dyan, income from hold upping, and income from kidnapping, no? Or income from etc. Okay, or drug sale of drug or prohibited drugs. I think no one will do it. But in case that the BIR finds out that you have other sources of income, even if it is from illegal source, that should be subject to taxes, because it is very clear. It is very clear in the definition of gross income that it should include all income from whatever source, including but not limited to the following. That's also a very important phrase. But not limited to the following. Ano ibig sabihin ng not limited to the following? Kung wala dito sa listahan, no, ng gross income according to the tax code, kung wala dito sa listahan yung income na natanggap mo, but it meets the elements, no, of a taxable income, that would still be taxable. Okay, that would still be taxable. Okay? Because but not limited to the following. Kahit wala sa listahan, as long as you meet the requisites of a taxable income, then that would still be part of the gross income. Okay, di ba? Parang safe palagi si government dito, kasi sabi niya but not limited to the following. Pag wala sa listahan, pasok pa rin yan sa gross income. Okay? Kumpara doon, ko i-compare natin yan siya sa allowable deductions. In allowable deductions, ang sabi doon, these are the allowable deductions. Okay? These are the allowable deductions. So meaning, pag wala doon sa listahan, not allowed, no? Not allowed as a deduction. Okay? Not allowed as a deduction. Sabi nga doon, okay, sabi nga doon sa ating sa lista sa ating tax code, the following are the allowable deduction. If it is not there, it should not be deducted. But for gross income, ang sabi but not limited to the following. So pag wala dito sa listahan, therefore it is taxable. Okay? Again, gross income are all income derived from whatever source, including, okay, but not limited to the following. Okay? So these are the items of gross income according to the tax code, no? According to the tax code. Okay, questions so far before we go to the details now of this income? Actually, I give a 2-minute break every 45 minutes of my classes. So we started at 3:15, I think. So in 2 minutes, I give you a short break. No? That's just 1 minute or 2 minutes lang, just to do away with the stress, okay, with the facing your computer. Okay, let's go to the elements. No, so when can we say that again, no, it is no a taxable income? So we follow the elements of gross income. Set it here. It is a return on capital. It is a realized benefit and not exempted by law. If all of these three are present, no, in a certain type of income, again, even if it is not found in the list, okay, of gross income stated earlier, that would still be taxable. Return on capital, okay, is that a return of capital? This return on capital is considered as an increase in wealth, no? An increase in wealth. Okay. For example, now you purchase something, no? You purchase something and you invested around 10,000 pesos. Okay. You purchase an investment and you put in 10,000 pesos in that investment. Then after several years, no, that you receive then 15,000 pesos. No? Dawat kag 15,000 pesos. The 10,000 pesos here and the 5,000 pesos here. The 10,000 pesos here is is considered as a return of capital. There is no increase in wealth because it's just simply returning what you have initially invested. Anything in excess of that return of capital is considered as a return on capital, and that is the taxable portion. Okay, that is a taxable portion, yung ating return on capital. Okay? So again, it should be an increase in wealth, return on capital, and not just a mere return of capital. It is a realized benefit. So when you say, what do you mean by realized benefit? Pag realized benefit, you can now enjoy. Now you can now enjoy the benefit of the income. You can now dispose it. It's already in your bank account. You are not prohibited. It's not just a paper income for that matter. No, in financial accounting, meron daw mga unrealized gains, no? Unrealized gain on investment, etc., so on and so forth. These are unrealized, meaning you cannot enjoy it yet. These are just paper income. You cannot enjoy it. So when can you enjoy it? Only when it is actually realized. And when will you actually realize it? It is when you actually sell. Now, when you actually sell, or you can actually collect something from the disposition of that property. Again, it must be a return on capital and it must be a realized benefit. And lastly, it is not exempted by law, contract, or treaty. So you say not exempted by law, no? Ang sabi sa batas, yan po ay taxable, not exempted. Yan ay subject to taxes. So kahit pa yan ay return on capital, okay? It is an increase in wealth, it is a realized benefit, but sabi ng batas, yan ay exempted. Then wala tayong magagawa, then that is exempted. Therefore, it is not subject to taxes. Okay, it is not subject to taxes. Okay, these are the elements of gross income, and these elements must be present before we consider an item of income as a taxable income. Okay, as a taxable income. Okay. Do you have any questions so far? Let's go to compensation. Well, I promise you a very short break. Na? Sige, let's have a screen break just for 2 minutes lang. I put a timer here. It's 4:02. Okay, let's have a screen break for 2 minutes. Okay, I'll be back at 4:04. You can just pause the recording. So we'll be back at 4:04. Back. Okay, so let's now go to the components or to the items now of gross income, and let's have a brief overview again of the items of gross income. Okay, let's start with compensation. Okay, so what is compensation? Okay, compensation is a remuneration received by an employee from the employment, no, or an income earned by an individual as a result of an employer-employee relationship. So there must be an employer-employee relationship, no, for that income to be considered as part of compensation. Okay, classification of income, we have regular income, supplementary income, and the 13th month pay and other benefits to be important na later on. Okay, as we proceed with our discussion, again, our goal here is that for every type of gross income, we must clearly identify what is exempted, what is subject to basic, and what is subject to final taxes. Okay, regular compensation, supplemental compensation, and the 13th month pay and other benefits. Okay, so let's start with regular compensation. What do we mean by regular compensation? So we say regular compensation, no? When the term itself regular, it is a fixed compensation. No? It is an amount of salary that we receive, okay, every 15th day or every end of the month that is fixed. Okay, so that is regular compensation. So anything that is fixed, even without doing, no, additional effort or rendering extra effort to do your function, okay, that is, you will still receive that income. That is what we call as regular compensation, and that will include, for example, salary and wages. Okay, salary and wages is part of regular compensation because we receive that one regularly. Okay, we receive that one regularly pay every payroll period. So it is exempted if it's received by the minimum wage earner. Okay, if the salary is received by minimum wage earner, or this is also called as the statutory minimum wage. No? So if the recipient is a minimum wage earner and the amount of salary given is the statutory minimum wage, then that is exempted. No? Again, what is the provision? Okay, provided that the amount given should not be more than the statutory minimum wage set forth by the regional tripartite and wages board. Okay, so productivity wages board of the Department of Labor and Employment. Okay, now what if they will exceed even 1 peso, no, even 1 peso from the statutory minimum wage? That will make the entire income taxable. Okay, it will make the entire income taxable. Okay, now in the minimum wage earner, no, again, that will include also later on in the supplemental compensation, the overtime pay, hazard pay, no, night differential pay are also exempted, provided that the basis of computing, okay, that pay would be the statutory minimum wage. Again, maskin pag mulapas na og piso, no, ang ato ang statutory um, okay, the statutory minimum wage, then that would still be subject to taxes. Okay, allowances can be liquidated. Okay, allowances can be liquidated, or it can also be unliquidated. If it is unliquidated, it is taxable. If it is liquidated, it is not taxable. Again, if it is liquidated, it is not taxable. If it is unliquidated, that would be a taxable item. Okay, exempted from the regular compensation is the employee's share for SSS, PhilHealth, and Pag-ibig contributions, and also including union dues. So, mandatory payment for SSS, PhilHealth, Pag-ibig contributions, and union dues, these are exempted. Okay, this again, it refers only to employees' share. Okay, to employees' share. For example, no, your monthly salary, okay, shall we say, is at 35,000 pesos. Okay, your SSS contribution is, shall we say, 1,500. No, your PhilHealth contribution is 500. Your Pag-ibig contribution, okay, is 300. Okay, question now is how much is your net taxable compensation income? Okay, how about is your net taxable compensation income? Please comment it. Again, please feel free to comment your answers for that. Okay, some answers are coming in. So we have 32,700, no, as their answer. Okay, so you have monthly salary of 35,000, and part of that 35,000 would be the SSS, PhilHealth, and Pag-ibig. Okay, so total SSS, PhilHealth, and Pag-ibig is 2,300. So 35,000 less 2,300, you have 32,700. So your taxable portion is 32,700. Okay, the 32,700. Okay, that is for regular compensation. Again, only the mandatory no contribution for SSS, PhilHealth, and Pag-ibig are exempted. If there are any voluntary okay, contributions to SSS, PhilHealth, and Pag-ibig, that will not be considered as an exempt income. Kasi pwede naman yan, no? Halimbawa, 1.5 lang yung SSS mo, gusto mo mag-contribute more so that mas malaki yung matanggap mo when you retire, then you can actually do it. No? But however, for taxation purposes, only the mandatory contribution is considered as an exempt item of income. Okay? Let's now go to compensation, a supplemental compensation. Okay, supplemental compensation. This is also known as the performance. Okay, it's also known as a performance-based compensation because it is given by the employer if you have rendered additional service, now additional effort, okay, on your end, okay, to more than what is required of you. Okay, so that's performance-based compensation. Okay, it's usually, for example, we have fees, commissions, tips, and gratuities. Overtime pay na if you work beyond your working hours, hazard pay if you're exposed in danger, night differential if you are asked to work between 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and holiday pay if you're asked to work during legal and special holidays. Other forms of compensation may also be considered as regular compensation. For example, payment of, or maybe they will just give you goods no, or some items, okay, for as payment of your salary. Kung wala lang pera si employer, no, they can give it as payment of salary, or pwede din nating for example uutangin ni employer yung sweldo mo, okay, mag-issue ng promissory note. It is also other forms of compensation, and that can be a regular compensation or a supplemental compensation. Okay, separation pay and retirement pay. Separation pay, we have a taxable separation pay, a non-taxable separation pay. If it is voluntary, okay, or non-voluntary, on the part of the employee. If it's voluntary on the part of the employee, meaning the employee files his or her resignation, or yeah, resignation from the from the company for the employer, therefore it's voluntary on his end. Therefore, that is a taxable separation pay. That is a taxable separation pay. But if it is non-voluntary, meaning no, that is maybe due to companies' decision to downsize or to retrench, okay, because of losses, no, especially at this time of pandemic, okay, or maybe due to death or illness of the employee, then that is non-voluntary on his end. Therefore, that is non-taxable. Okay, basta non-voluntary, okay, on the part of the employee to resign, to separate from the business, from the employer, that is non-taxable. Okay, retirement pay. How about retirement pay? Generally, retirement pay is a taxable item. Okay, it's a taxable item, but it can be considered as non-taxable provided that the following conditions are met. Number one, the retirement plan is registered, okay, registered with the BIR. This is the retirement plan. It's registered with the BIR. Number two, if the taxpayer has rendered, okay, service to the employee, has rendered service to the employer. Where am I? Okay, has rendered service to the employer for at least 10 years. Okay. Number three, at least 50 years old. And number four, it's the first time. Okay. First time to avail the exemption. Okay. Register the BIR, not more than 10 years. Okay. Not more than 50 years old. Again, sorry, more than or equal to 50 years old, and then first time to avail of the exemption, then the taxpayer in that case, or the employee in that case, can enjoy, okay, exemption from his or her retirement pay. So the four conditions must be present so that it can be, or it will be exempted from any taxes. Okay, that is the retirement pay. Okay. I shared to you some exercises na just for at least to hindi masyadong puro discussion tayo. Okay? Sorry. Just give you 3 minutes maybe to go over with this one, and let you give me your answers through chat, no? On what your thoughts on this, if this is taxable or not taxable. Okay. So again, maybe you can go over with this one for 3 minutes or 2 minutes. Then please comment your answers whether taxable or not taxable. Number one, Angela was employed in 1987 when she was 25 years old. In 2019, she availed of early retirement, no, program from her employer. Is it taxable or not taxable? Okay, the assumption here would always be it is registered with the BIR. No? The second is, um, yes, it's more than 10 years of service. That's 1997 to 2019. That is almost how many years? Almost 22 years. No? So then, but she's not yet 50 years old by then, but she's still 47 years old. So therefore, that would be a taxable retirement pay. As soon as Angela joined the another employer and worked therein for 7 more years, after which she retired from her employment. Okay, so again, assuming that the retirement plan is registered, okay, and then she's already not more than 10 years of service, so therefore that would still be a taxable item. Okay. Then not more than 10 years man for that. Hindi kasi more than 10 years for that certain employer. Assume instead that, Angel was 30 years old when she joined her first employer and worked therein for 20 years old after which she retired at 50. She immediately joined another employer and retired after 10 years of service when she was 60 years old. So the first retirement would be exempted. Therefore, the second retirement, no, would be taxable already, because take note of the last requirement that it should be the first time to avail of the exemption. Okay, so let us continue with our discussion on compensation. Let's now go to 13th month pay and other benefits. Okay, the 13th month pay, go to our general rule. What is our general rule on the 13th month pay and other benefits? It's here, no? The general rule is the first 90,000 is exempted. In excess of 90,000, that will now be subject to basic taxes. Again, the first 90,000 is exempt. In excess of 90,000, that will now be subject to basic taxes. Okay, so 13th month pay is we will follow the general rule. So we need the first 90,000 of the 13th month pay is exempted. In excess of the 90,000, that would be subject to basic taxes. The minimis benefits that is exempted in excess of the threshold will be subject to the general rule. Okay, so we have a long list, I think more than 10, no? A list of de minimis benefits. Okay, and you please take note there, okay, the nature of the de minimis benefit and the amount, okay, the threshold amount. Yun yung pinaka-importante dyan. No? Ano yung threshold, no, ng ating de minimis benefits, because in excess of the threshold, okay, that will now be subject to the general rule. Okay? So subject na yan to the general rule if it is already beyond threshold. So ang importante po sa de minimis benefits ay malaman natin kung ano yung klaseng de minimis benefit at saka magkano yung threshold. Kasi beyond that, that will now be subject to the excess thereof will now be subject to the general rule, which is again the first 90,000 is exempt, and in excess of 90,000 will be subject to basic taxes. So, yung 13th month pay mo, i-add mo yung mga excess ng iyong de minimis benefit, at saka nandito yung other benefits that will now be the total there. Okay, the first 90,000 is exempted, in excess of 90,000 that will be subject to basic taxes. Okay, now let's go to fringe benefits. Fringe benefits. Okay, final tax is received by manager or supervisor. Otherwise, it is subject to basic taxes. So, pag ang taxability ng fringe benefit ay magdedepende kung sino yung nakatanggap at ano yung posisyon ng nakatanggap. If ang nakatanggap ay ang manager or supervisor, then it is subject to final tax, which we call as the fringe benefit taxes. But if ang nakatanggap ay rank and file employee, then that will be subject to basic, now that will be subject to basic taxes. Okay, let's discuss further fringe benefits. Okay, what is the characteristics of fringe benefit? It is a final tax. Take note, it is a final tax. Therefore, whatever is received by the employee, I mean, whatever amount is received by the employee or the value, no, of the item received by the employee is presumed to be, no, net of the final taxes. Okay, so net of the final taxes. Kasi nga, yung FBT ay final tax, so yung pagtanggap ni employee niyan ay nakuha na or is already net, no, ng ating final taxes. So for example, what is given there, ang natanggap ni employee is only 65 worth, no, of benefit. Therefore, this is the net amount. So meron pa tayong gross amount dito at saka net of taxes. Okay? So, again, yan yung ating principle dyan. Yung natanggap ni employee is presumably the net amount, or we call that one as the monetary value. Okay, the monetary value of the benefit received by the employee. Okay, it is a tax of the employee withheld and remitted by the employer. So kaninong tax yung fringe benefit? Okay, it is not a tax of the employer, it is the tax of the employee. No? Kay employee yung tax na yan, hindi yan kay employer. It is a tax of the employee. Ang role lang ni employer dyan as a withholding agent is to withhold the tax and remit the tax to the BIR. Again, is to withhold the tax and remit the tax to the BIR. Therefore, since it is a tax of the employee, it will be imposed regardless of the taxability of the employer. Kahit pa si employer ay exempted, kahit pa si employer ay taxable, kahit pa si employer ay cooperative or non-government organization, or si employer ay government, it will not matter. Why? Because remember that this is a tax of the employee, no? Not the tax of the employer. Okay? Then based on the gross up monetary value. The tax is computed based on the gross up monetary value. So this is the gross up monetary value minus the FBT. It will give us the monetary value, okay, of the benefit. No? Monetary value of the benefit. Okay? So, hindi naman pwede. For example, yung fringe benefit tax rate natin ay 35%. Huwag mong i-multiply kaagad, no? Kasi pag monetary value times 35%, iba yung lalabas. Hindi yan yung FBT natin. Hindi yan siya ito na hinahanap natin. Okay? But our monetary value is 100%. That is the gross up monetary value. For example, the tax there is 35%. So what we receive is only 65%. So to compute therefore the FBT, that will be our monetary value divided by, okay, divided by, kung 35% yung tax natin divided by 65%, then we multiply it by 35%. Why do we need to divide it by 65% for us to get the gross up monetary value, or the 100% of the benefit that we receive? Okay, or the actual, the gross value of the benefit given, no, by the employer to the employee. Okay? That is how we compute, no? Madali lang 'yan, madali lang 'yan. Madali lang yung ating um fringe benefit taxes. Ang problema lang dito is how to compute, no? How to compute the monetary value. Yan yung challenge dito. How to compute the monetary value. Kasi after once we get the monetary value, mabilis na lang pagpindot sa calculator, no? Nang divided by 65 times 35%. That's very easy, no? In the calculator, right? Now, how to compute the monetary value? Okay, how to determine the monetary value, okay, of the benefit. Before that, tingnan mo natin magkano yung mga rates na applicable, no, for the FBT, okay, for the NRA, NETB, or non-resident alien not engaged in trade or business. I told you earlier, general rule, they are always subject to 25% final taxes. For individual taxpayers, they subject to 35% final taxes. Again, this individual taxpayers only refers to rank, sorry, not rank, managers and supervisors. Okay? To managers and supervisors for them to be taxable, okay, to be subject to fringe benefit taxes. Okay? There are no questions so far. Let us proceed now to how to compute. No? Ang laking ang tanong po dyan is how to compute the monetary value, okay, of the benefit. Let me uh, stop the share here. Let me share here a screen whiteboard. Okay, the question here is how to compute the monetary value. Okay, the fringe benefit can be given in three forms. It can be given in cash. It can be given in cash. Okay, it can be given in kind or you can be given in use. So when use, you are just allowed to enjoy the property, but you don't actually own the property. But if you're given the kind, meaning you are to enjoy the property at the same time own the property. So under these three possible cases, no, of the fringe benefits given to the managerial or supervisory employee, let us determine how to compute the general rule on how to compute the monetary value of that benefit. Okay, and of course, what is the corresponding fringe benefit expense? Okay. What is the corresponding fringe benefit expense there? So if you're given a cash, now if you're given a cash, if you're given a cash, the monetary value there is of course equal to the cash given. Okay. Cash given or paid. Okay, kung magkano yung cash na binigay sa iyo ni employer or magkano yung cash na binayad ni employer on behalf sa kanyang employee, that is the monetary value. Okay? So, yan yung ating monetary value divided by 65% multiplied by 35%, we can now compute the tax. How about the expense to be recorded by the employer? Okay, that will include the cash given or paid plus the fringe benefit taxes. Okay, cash given or paid plus the fringe benefit taxes. Yung cash given or paid ay ang monetary value. Tama? Yung FBT ay, of course, the FBT, the fringe benefit tax. So ano yung monetary value plus the FBT? What is monetary value plus the FBT? What is monetary value? What is monetary value plus the FBT? That is the ano po yun? That is the gross up. That's correct. That's the gross up. That's a gross up monetary value. So if cash is given, your expense is equal to the gross up monetary value. Your monetary value is the cash given or paid. However, there is an exception to this rule. So, anong sabi dito? Except rent. Kasi ano ba monetary value pag rent? Okay? Is only 50% of cash given or paid. Okay, for rent, it's only 50% of cash given or paid. Yung iyong monetary value. Okay? Kasi hindi man binigay sa iyo, 'di ba? Pinagamit lang yung property. So 50% of the cash given or paid. However, your expense would still be the same. Okay? Your expense will still be your cash given or paid o still plus the FB taxes. But in this example, that is not already the gross up monetary value. Kasi yung monetary value natin is only 50%. Yung expense natin ay yung total, no? Na total na rental payment. Okay? That is if you are given cash, no, as a form of fringe benefit. Okay? Questions so far? Okay, any question? Okay. Now let's go to kind. No? What if given to you? What is given to you is a kind, no? Really a real property, for example, or a car. Okay, ang binigay sa iyo, no? What is the monetary value of that benefit? The monetary value of that benefit is equal to the acquisition cost, okay, zonal value or market value of that property given. Okay, whichever is higher. Okay, whichever is higher kasi yan po ay taxable. Okay, remember for you to you don't need to memorize really higher or lower ba yan. Okay, what you always think is what is favorable to the government. If what is favorable, of course, if it's a taxable item, ang pabor sa gobyerno ay whichever is higher. If yan po ay deductible item, ang pabor sa gobyerno ay whichever is lower. Okay? So isipin niyo na lang ano yung pabor sa gobyerno. Okay? So whichever is higher, your expense there would be your of course, would be your book value of the property kasi yan yung ating nasa ating libro, no? Then of course plus the book value or the fair value, okay, plus the fringe benefit taxes. Of course, you recognize there any gain or loss if there is any difference between the book value and the zonal or market value. Okay, sa taxation pala, pag sinabi nating fair market value, yan po ay zonal or market value, whichever is higher. Again, when we say fair market value in taxation, it means the higher between. Okay? It is the higher between zonal value or market value. Yan pong ibig sabihin ng fair value in taxation. Okay, any question?
Wala naman po, sir.
For a while, huh? Okay. Now, how about if what is given to you now by the employer is only the use of frac or you are allowed to use no the property. Okay, so not in kind. So you say in kind again. There are two things that you will enjoy there: the right to own the property and the right to use the property. That's why 100% of the value of the property is given. Okay. However, if it is only use of the property, it's only use the property we only, okay, consider 50%. Okay, 50% ng ating na 50% lang no yung ating fringe benefit, yung ating monetary value diyan because we are only allowed to use the property 50% of the corresponding cost. 50% of the corresponding cost of the property. Ano ba yung cost ng property? Okay, what is the cost of property? What is the annual cost, okay, of the use of the property? That is 50% of the depreciation. Okay? That's 50% of the depreciation. Okay? So ano ba yung how is depreciation computed? Of course, it is computed based on no, the acquisition cost or the fair market value, whichever is higher, divided by the useful life. Again, acquisition cost or the fair market value, whichever is higher, divided by the useful life. So when we say useful life, okay, magdedepende po yan if yan ay personal property or real property. If personal property, 5 years ang useful life. If real property, 20 years ang useful life. Again, 50% no of the depreciation, so acquisition cost or fair market value, whichever is higher, divided by 5 or divided by 20. Okay, 5 if that is personal property, 20 if it's a real property. Whatever the result there, you just multiply it by 50%. That is your monetary value. Divided by 65% and multiplied by 35%. That is now your fringe benefit tax. Your expense there would be equal to the fringe benefit tax because wala ka namang iba, di mo naman binigay, wala ka namang cash na binigay. Okay, so yung expense mo dyan on the fringe benefit will only pertain to the taxes that you have actually or the employer has actually withheld or remitted. Okay, that is the general rule in the computation of the monetary value, okay, of the fringe benefit, either given in cash, kind, or use. Of course, no? There is always in taxation and even in law, there's always an exception to the general rule. So if you go over with some items of the fringe benefits there, merong mga exceptions to the general rule. No? For example, no, pinautang mo si employee, pinautang mo si manager or supervisor. Ano bang sabi ng ating rule on the fringe benefit? Ang sabi doon, the the interest must be at 12%. If nagpautang ka kay employer who is a manager or supervisor at a rate less than 12%, the difference there is considered as a fringe benefit. No? So yung difference dyan, that will be subjected to fringe benefit taxes. Okay? The interest forgone on the part of the employer. Okay? And I think yan siya yung mga yan yung mga exceptions to the general rule, but I think yung baon-baon nyo sa exam ay ito po yung ating general rules in the computation of the monetary value if the property is in cash, kind, or use. Okay? Okay. Let's now proceed. Let me stop the sharing of this and continue sharing this. Okay, so that is all for compensation. To summarize it, again, I put a summary here. Okay, subject to final taxes are the fringe benefits received by manager and supervisor, okay, received by NRAN, ATB, and by NRFC, exempt, mandatory SSS, GSIS, PhilHealth, and Pag-ibig, statutory minimum wage of minimum wage earners, okay, the first 90,000, the 13th month pay and other benefits, separation pay, involuntary, retirement pay, provided that the conditions are met, de minimis benefits, okay, fringe benefit for employers' convenience, okay, and all others are subject to basic taxes. Okay? Uy, bakit end discussion na? Teka ha. Ano ba? Masaya ba kayo? Kasi end discussion na. For a while. Di pa dapat end yun eh. Okay. Here. Okay, next would be the next item for the fringe benefit tuloy for gross income would be business and professional income. So in business, we define gross income in the same manner that we define gross income in accounting, which is your gross sales less your sales returns, discounts, and allowances, and cost of goods sold. So take note that for the purpose for computing the gross income in taxation, okay, ang i-deduct mo lang dyan ay cost of goods sold. So therefore, it is actually net sales less cost of goods sold. Do not deduct operating expenses if you're asked of the gross taxable income. Okay? Hindi lang din po gross sales yan. No? Pag sinabing gross taxable income, that would be net of the cost of goods sold. Because remember, the cost of goods sold is a return of premium, okay, or return of capital. Okay, again, net sales minus your cost of goods sold. Okay, let's now go to gains from dealings on properties. No, what time is it? It's 4:45. Okay. Um, let me just make this briefly. No, so gains from dealings on properties. No, the important thing here. This is about the disposition, okay, of any properties. No, of owned by the entity. Well, the most important thing there is you have to differentiate really what is a capital asset versus an ordinary asset. Again, capital asset versus ordinary asset. Yan yung pinaka-importante kasi in taxation, capital asset enjoys, no? Capital asset enjoys a preferential treatment. Merong special treatment si capital asset. Pero ano ba yung definition ng ordinary asset? If you look at the tax code, okay, mahababang definition yan ng ordinary asset. But let me just summarize it into four. Okay? Number one, is it used in business? Number two, that is subject to depreciation. Number three, it is available for sale. And number four, that is part of the inventory. Okay, again, if the asset is used in business or is subject to depreciation, available for sale or part of inventory, kahit isa lang dyan sa apat na iyan, yan po ay considered as an ordinary asset. Okay, again, if any of the four na meet niya yung requirement or na answer niya yung question, pwede mo rin gawing tanong ito. Is the asset used in business? Is the asset subject to depreciation? Is the asset available for sale? Or is the asset part of inventory? Again, kahit isang yes lang dyan sa apat na iyan, yan po ay ordinary asset. Okay? Pag yan po ay no lahat, sa apat na yan, no lahat ang sagot, then that is a capital asset. Kasi yung definition ng capital asset, no, in taxation is just residual. Ang sabi ng batas natin, capital assets are those assets that are not ordinary. O diba, pilosopo? Okay, sabi doon, capital assets are those assets that are not considered as ordinary asset. So titingnan mo, ano yung mga ordinary assets? So yung apat dito, again, if no yung lahat dyan, then that is a capital asset. So I've told you, capital assets enjoys a preferential tax treatment, okay, enjoys a preferential tax treatment in taxation. Let me illustrate it to you briefly, okay, and in summary also, that it would be hopefully it will be easier for you to remember. No? So yung ordinary asset natin, a sale of an ordinary asset will of course result to either an ordinary gain, or it will result to an ordinary loss. Okay? Ordinary gain is part of gross income. It is 100% taxable, and as 100% taxable, again, that is part of our gross income. Okay, so part ng gross income. If it's an ordinary loss, it is 100% deductible, and that is part of the allowable deductions. Okay? That's ordinary gain and ordinary loss. So importante, no? Pag ordinary gain, lahat ng iyon ay part ng gross income. Pag ordinary loss ay lahat ng ordinary loss natin ay allowable deductions. So if we go back to our income tax model, there's gross income there, doon papasok si ordinary gain, minus allowable deduction, dyan papasok si ordinary loss. Ngayon, how about capital asset? Kasi nga meron siyang special tax treatment, no? Meron tayong personal property, meron tayong real property. Sa personal property, meron tayong shares of stocks. To be specific, we have domestic shares of stocks and other personal property. Pag domestic shares of stocks that is sold through the Philippine Stock Exchange, or it can be sold directly to buyer. Again, if it's sold through Philippine Stock Exchange, or is it sold directly to buyer? Okay. If it is sold to the Philippine, if it is sold not through the Philippine Stock Exchange, that is exempt from income tax. It is exempt from income tax, but it is subject to percentage tax. Again, exempt from income tax, but subject to percentage taxes. I'm not so sure if you're done with percentage taxes, but it is exempt from income tax, but subject to percentage tax of 6/10 no, of 1% of the gross selling price. Yan yung kanyang percentage tax dyan. Percentage tax is not an income tax. Okay? If it is sold directly to buyer, na hindi dumaan sa Philippine Stock Exchange, it is sold directly to buyer. Again, we are referring here on domestic shares of stock sold directly to buyer. They subject to 15% capital gains taxes. It is subject to 15% capital gains taxes. This capital gains tax is based on the selling price minus the cost of the shares sold directly to buyer. Okay? Others will be that will follow the general rule, which I will discuss later. For real properties, we have real properties located abroad, which is subject to the general rule. And there are also real properties located Philippines, and that can be considered as your principal residence or not a principal residence. Okay, is your principal residence or not a principal residence? If it's a principal residence, it is exempt from income taxes, provided that some conditions are met. And if it is not a principal residence, it is subject to 6% CGT. Okay, that CGT is the higher between the fair market value and the selling price. Kung ano yung higher ng fair market value at saka ng selling price, yan yung po yung basis ng ating 6%. As you can see in the capital gains tax on real properties located in the Philippines, wala tayong dineduct na cost because in that particular transaction, there is always a presumption of gain. Again, there is always a presumption of gain. We always assume that there is a gain in the sale of real properties. Okay? Sige. Now, how about this general rule? Ano ibig sabihin sa general rule na ito? Na sale of other personal properties classified as capital asset or sale of real properties located abroad that is subject to the general rule, and the general rule there is that is basic taxes. Pero ang tanong diyan, ano ba yung basic tax treatment natin sa sale ng capital asset? Let me sorry. Okay. Okay, what is that? What is that capital? What is that general rule on the capital asset? Okay. The general rule on the basic tax for capital asset. Well, in that case, you have to determine how much is your net gain or your net loss. Sorry, not that one. It is your capital gain or your capital loss. Magkano ba yung capital gain ko? Magkano yung capital loss ko? It is computed, no? With your selling price less your cost. Okay? In determining how much will be recognized as capital gain or capital loss will depend on the taxpayer. If the taxpayer is a corporation, we declare 100% of the capital gain and the capital loss. Again, if the taxpayer is a corporation, we declare 100%, no, of the capital gain and the capital loss. But if the taxpayer is an individual, the holding period will apply. Ano po yung holding period? That is the period from the time you acquired the asset until you dispose the asset. Okay? If it is not more than 1 year, that is short term. If it's already more than 1 year, that is long term. If it is short term, you recognize 100%. If it is long term, you recognize 50% of the capital gain and the capital loss. Again, pag capital gain at saka capital loss, no? If it's a corporation, 100%. Pag individual, pag not more than 1 year, yung kanyang holding period, 100%. If more than 1 year, that is long term, the holding period, then it will only be 50% will be recognized. This net capital gain or net capital loss will result to a net capital gain or a net capital loss, di ba? So mas mataas si capital gain, of course, it will result to net capital gain. Pag mas mataas si capital loss, it will result to a net capital loss. So what is now the proper treatment of the net capital gain and the net capital loss? No? The net capital gain is taxable and that will be part of the gross income. Okay? That will be part of the gross income. So therefore, the capital loss is deductible only up to the extent of the capital gain. Hindi siya pwedeng ilabas separate compared sa ordinary loss, di ba? Part talaga siya ng allowable deduction. But a capital loss is not it's not no, in that case because that will be deducted against capital gain. Yung net na lang yung ititreat mo kung paano. Yung net capital gain, taxable, part of gross income. Paano pag net capital loss? Okay, this is non-deductible. Okay? If the result there is a net capital loss that is non-deductible, ang tanong dyan, ano po yung gagawin ko if it is non-taxable? If it is non-deductible, no? Yung gross income is non-deductible, ano po yung gagawin ko dyan? Well, if it is a corporation, okay, wala ka nang magagawa. That's already forfeited in favor of the government. Again, the net capital loss, if corporation, that is already forfeited in favor of the uh, government. Okay, if that is an individual, if the loss there for individual can be considered as NCLCO or net capital loss carryover. Okay, the net capital loss carryover, but that is only a maximum of 1 year. Okay, that's a maximum of 1 year as a net capital loss carryover. Saan po mag-i-effect yung carryover? No, para saan po yung carryover? That will be a carryover next year against net capital gain lang din po. Hindi po siya part ng allowable deduction. But instead, that will be part of the deduction against net capital gain next year. Okay? Next year. So that would be net capital loss carry over. Again, pag corporation, wala ka nang magagawa. Pero pag individual, meron tayong NCLCO which you can carry over for 1 year. Okay? Sige. Okay ba tayo? Baka information overload na. Sige lang, kaya natin to. Okay. Let's go now to the interest income. No? So interest income is a passive income, but let me just illustrate on the taxability of the interest income. It will depend. Okay, it will depend on the source. Now, if the source is a bank and the source is non-bank, if ang source niya ay non-bank, automatically that is subject to basic taxes. Again, this will exclude NRA, NETB, and NRFC, because as what we have mentioned, NRA, NETB, and NRFCs are subject to 25% final taxes. No? So it will be subject to basic tax lang. How about if it comes from a bank? No? What if it comes from a bank? Okay, it depends. Now, if it is a local currency or it is a foreign currency. If it is a local currency, it will now depend if the taxpayer is an individual or the taxpayer is a corporation. Again, this will exclude, this illustration will exclude, okay, NRA, NETB, and NRFC. Okay? Pag corporation yan at saka local currency, automatically it is subject to 20% final tax. Again, pag corporation yan, automatic subject to 20% final taxes. Paano pag individual? If the term is short term or the term is long term, okay, if it is short term, if it is not more than 5 years, and long term if it is, yeah, not more than 5 years. Long term if it is more than 5 years. Pag long term, it is exempted, okay, from taxes. If it is short term, it is subject to 20% final tax. Again, pag short term, subject to 20% final taxes. So, again, take note, if local currency coming from individual, titignan mo muna yung term. If it is short term, less not more than 5 years, 20% final tax. If it is corporate, if it is long term or more than 5 years, that is exempt from taxes. Okay? Corporation, that's 20% final taxes on the interest income. For foreign currency, titingnan mo yung kanyang residency. No? Pag siya ay resident or siya ay non-resident. If it is resident, it is subject to 15% final tax. If it is non-resident, that will be exempted from taxes, and this will include NRA, NETB, and NRFC. Kasali po dyan si NRA, NETB, at saka si NRFC. No? They are exempted, so that will be their exception to the general rule that their income will always be subject to 25% final taxes. Kasi pag interest income yan, galing sa foreign currency in the bank, and they are non-residents, therefore they enjoy the exemption from any taxes. Okay? This is how we tax interest. Let's now go to rent income. Okay pa ba natin? May mga ano na, parang konti na lang tayo. Okay. Anyway, so what is the composition of the rent income? So we have obligations of the lessor paid by the lessee. So yung mga dapat bayaran ni lessor pero si lessee ang nagbayad. I think this is the same in operating lease, no, in financial accounting. For example, the insurance of the property or the taxes of the property that should be paid by the lessor, but it is actually paid by the lessee. Therefore, it is an income, no, on the part of the lessor. Okay, advanced rentals. Okay, in taxation, okay, yung rent income, it is taxable upon collection. Okay, it is taxable upon collection provided that it is unrestricted, okay, or it is applied in the future years of rental. Okay, but in rent, let's continue. No, so I think I've ended earlier on the rent income. No, so as what I've said, when it comes to taxation, rent income is taxable upon collection. Okay, so provided that it is the advance collection there is unrestricted, or if it is applied or it is applied in the future rental payments. So depende po yan sa agreement ni lessor at saka si lessee as reflected in the contract of lease. Okay, and then the leasehold improvements also, it is either outright method or the spread out method. No? So when you say outright method, on the time that the improvements at the time the improvements were made, no, or were completed, that's also the time that the lessor will recognize the income. Bakit po ba income ang leasehold improvement? Kasi 'di ba ang pinaparentahan mo doon dati ay lupa lang. No? Pagkatapos ng rental ng lease contract for example, then you have there an agreement that whatever improvements introduced to the property will be turned over to the lessor, then therefore that will now be an additional income on the lessor kasi pagbalik sa kanya, 'di ba? Pagbalik sa kanya may ano na, may lupa na. Okay? So that is an income on the part of the lessor. Okay? So either outright method, again, one time recognition of income only at the time that the improvement was completed, or it is a spread out method. It is the income is recognized over the term of the lease. Now, the book value of the property at the end of the lease term will be spread, okay, or will be recognized every year. Now, will be recognized every year, okay, based every year throughout the lease term, okay, of the contract. Okay, that is for the rent income. Now let's go to royalties. Now for royalties, it will really depend if the taxpayer is okay an individual. If the taxpayer is an individual or the taxpayer is a corporation. The taxpayer is a corporation, automatically all royalties is subject to 20% final tax. But for individuals, you have to check whether it comes from books, literary works, and musical composition. That's 10% final tax. Others will be 20% final taxes. Again, for individuals, on books, literary works, and musical composition, that is a 10% final tax. For others, will be 20% final tax. But for corporation, it will be 20% final tax. Now, that is on royalties. Okay? Unless the royalty is an active income, you say active income, that's already the transaction, it's already the nature, no, of business of the taxpayer, that it is an active income, therefore it is subject to basic taxes. Okay, let's now go to dividends. How do we tax dividends? Okay. The taxation of dividends will depend on the declarant, no, of the dividend. If the declarant of the dividend is a domestic corporation, or the declarant of the dividend is a foreign corporation. If the declarant is a foreign corporation, right away, the dividends is subject to basic taxes. Again, if the declarant is a foreign corporation, that is subject to basic tax. If the declarant is a domestic corporation, again, if the declarant is a domestic corporation, you check who receives it. Now, if it is an individual, okay, or a corporation. If it is domestic corporation or resident foreign corporation, it is exempted. This is what we call as the intercorporate dividends. Okay, that is the intercorporate dividends. But if it's received by NRFC, we said according to our general rule, it is 25%. However, it can be decreased to 15% if there is what we call as a tax sparing rule. Okay, ano ba yung tax sparing rule? It's like a reciprocity. Now, it's like a reciprocity agreement wherein the country, the Philippines, and the foreign country has agreed not to impose a lower tax on the NRFC's earning interest in their country. Okay, that is from domestic corporations received by corporation. For individuals, if that is RC resident citizen and our non-resident citizen and resident alien, that is subject to 10% final tax if received by NRA ETB or non-resident alien engaged in trade or business 20%, while NRA NETB, that will be the general rule of 25% final taxes. Again, at this side, these are the declarant of the dividend, and at this side, these are the recipient, no, of the dividend. So the taxability for dividends and as to who declares the dividends and who receives the dividends. Okay, that is the final taxes on dividends. Again, only if that is received from a foreign corporation is that's the time that it will be subjected to to basic taxes. But this dividends received now from foreign corporation can also be exempted from taxes provided that, okay, it can also be exempted from taxes provided that, what are the conditions set forth here? Okay. Dividends received by domestic corporation from foreign corporation can be exempted if the following conditions are met. The dividends actually received or remitted into the Philippines are reinvested in the business operations of the domestic corporation within the next taxable year. Okay, so meaning kung pag yung natanggap niya na dividends ng domestic corporation from a foreign corporation is actually used now for the reinvested to the business operations of the domestic corporation, then that would be exempted. The dividends received shall only be used to fund the working capital requirements, capital expenditures, dividend payments, investment in domestic subsidiaries, and infrastructure projects. No? So gagamitin ng domestic corporation yung natanggap niya na dividends from the foreign corporation for these purposes mentioned here, okay, would also be exempted. And lastly, to qualify for exemption, the domestic corporation holds directly at least 20% in value of the outstanding shares of the foreign corporation and was held the shareholdings uninterrupted. So any of the three, if the foreign domestic corporation met any of the three requisites, then um that would be exempted. Okay? Yung na-receive the dividend ni domestic corporation from foreign corporation, instead of subjecting it to basic taxes, it would be exempted. Okay? Then let's go now to prizes and winnings. Okay? For prizes, if received by individual or received by corporation, okay, pag ang corporation is subject to basic tax. Pag si individual, titingnan nyo muna yung amount. If the amount is not more than 10K or it is more than 10K, if not more than, ganyan pala dapat, no? If not more than 10K, that will be subject to basic tax. If it is more than 10K, that is subject to final taxes of 20%. Again, if the recipient of the prize is an individual, you look at the check on the amount. Okay, if that is not more than 10K, that is subject to basic. If more than 10K, it is subject to final taxes of 20%. Okay, and it's a corporation that will be subject to basic taxes. And for winnings, pag winnings, ang corporation nakatanggap ng winnings, basic kaagad yan siya. Okay? Pag individual, pag winnings yan, is subject diretso ng 20% final tax regardless of the amount. Okay? Regardless of the amount. No? So yung winnings ito yung may effort, no, on their end. So no, that is received by individual, 20% final tax kaagad, no, yung ating winnings. That is the tax on prizes and winnings. Nabilisan na natin kasi 99 na lang, hindi na umabot ng 100. Okay, so these are prizes and winnings. So again, I am just giving you an easy way, to memorize, not memorize, to be familiar of the taxes applicable. So I'm pretty sure income tax has a lot of taxes. Okay, because if I intend to give you just an exercises and then we just discuss it, I think it will not serve the long-term purpose. Okay, it will just serve the short-term purpose of just passing your exam. Okay, but we are here not just to pass your exam, but of course to pass the CPA exams, and also now if you don't have any plans to take, or after you become a CPA, still you can remember the tax rates, no, even after. That's why these things were I made up on my own now when I was still reviewing almost 15, 14 years ago. Okay, so until now I can still remember because again Number one, there's a personal touch on that, and it is easier to memorize or to familiarize rather than reading the books. Okay, so I hope now this will really help. Okay. Now let's go to annuities. Now for annuities, the rule on the when you say annuities, this is a return now of an insurance premium. So if you invested in the insurance, okay, and then babalik sa iyo yung binayad mo or yung makakatanggap ka ng ng proceeds of the insurance, okay? The annuity there or the return of premium there, 'di ba? Kanto kasi 'yan, no? Yung insured natin magbabayad ng premium kay insurance company. The same time, kung may mangyari kay insured natin, the insurance company will give proceeds to the beneficiary. Okay, if the beneficiary is the recipient, so beneficiary yung nakatanggap talaga, that is already exempted. Okay? Pag si beneficiary nakatanggap. But if nakatanggap is si insured, okay, if the insured outlive the insurance, which is yung uso ngayon sa mga bagong insurance product, di ba? Para siyang challenge. No? Kung buhay ka pa ng age 65 or buhay ka pa ng age 70, ikaw makakatanggap ng milyon-milyong proceeds ng iyong insurance company. That will serve as your That's why it's not just pure insurance, but it's also an investment. Okay. In this case, if the recipient of the proceeds is the insured, we will apply here the concept of the return of capital. So only the return of capital will be subject to, the return of capital is exempted from taxes, and only the return on capital will be subjected to taxes. Okay, that is on annuities. Okay, now, what time is it? It's 5:22. Okay, I'll just ito na lang, no, para mas ano tayo to save time also. Because again, my apologies. I really need to travel back to Cebu. I just finished deductions now because this is just a few item. Then on the computation of tax on individuals and corporation, I will share a lecture video because I already have a lecture video reserved. No, I will share a lecture video to the organizers, and then it's up to them as to how they will distribute the video lectures to you. No? Maybe you have your Facebook page, okay, or your Facebook group, no, wherein they can upload the video. I am authorizing or allowing them to do it, okay, para we can save the last topics, no, because I think it will really lack of time tayo, 5:22 na, no? So you just finish deductions, and then after that yung ibang topics na computation of taxes for individuals and corporation, again, I'll just give the organizers an access to my video lecture in my undergrad program. Okay, that is a short discussion, so that will also serve as a review. Okay, so I hope that will be fine. Okay, now let's go to deductions. No? So as what I've said, there are two types of deductions. We have the optional standard. Sorry, that's a wrong in circle. Dapat yung circle dyan. OSD, okay, at saka itemized deductions. So the OSD or the optional standard deduction and the itemized deduction. Obviously, the difference there, if it is an itemized deduction, the taxpayer has to present line per line yung mga deductions, no? Item per item yung mga deduction, and that should be supported with a receipt, okay, or any other documents, okay? But if it is an OSD, or we call it as the optional standard deduction, yan po ay set na ng tax law natin kung magkano yung maximum amount that you can claim. Okay, the maximum amount that you can claim. Okay, so these are the composition of the itemized deductions. Okay, so but we will only discuss a portion of that on the following items quickly lang. On business expenses, interest, losses, and charitable and other contributions. No? So ito yung mga i-discuss natin ngayon, the remaining time, short time that we have. Okay? Because generally, ang condition lang naman, no, for the deductions to be allowed is number one, it must be ordinary and necessary. We say it is necessary, it is needed by the entity, no, to incur that type of expenses. It's not unusual. Okay? And it's ordinary, it talks about the amount involved. No? It must not be excessive, it must be reasonable, no, as to amount. So all other items here, yun yung requirement doon, no? Yun yung requirement doon, okay? But for some items, it is the BIR, or it is the law, no? That sets, okay, how much is the amount considered as reasonable. So they set a maximum amount. So if your actual expenses for that exceeds the maximum, you are not allowed to claim the excess. Only the maximum amount should be claimed. Or if your actual expense is lower than the maximum, then you are only allowed to claim that actual expenses. Kasi nga ceiling, yung sinet ng government. For example, in business expenses, particularly the entertainment, amusement, and recreation expenses or the year. No? Entertainment, amusement, and recreation expense or the year. Okay, sabi dito, the maximum amount, no, for those taxpayers engaged in the sale of goods is only 1/2% of net sales. So kung net sales mo 1 million, no, 1/2% of that is only 5,000 pesos. Tama ba? Yeah, 5,000 pesos. Then yung actual mo, for example, is 7,000 pesos, and you can only claim up to 5,000 pesos, no, for the entertainment, amusement, and recreation expenses. But if you are in a sale of service, the maximum amount there is 1% of the net revenue. Okay? Sir, bakit mas malaki yung allowed pag nasa service ka kumpara nung nasa product or sale of inventory ka? Malamang, no? Because yung sale of inventory naman, i-display mo yung product dyan, bibili na naman yung tao, no? Compared to sale of service, walang makikita, intangible yung service mo. So walang makikita. So anong ginagawa doon? Words of mouth, no? Of course, you need to meet your client, okay, in a dinner, okay, or in a snacks. Tapos doon mo i-present sa kanila yung kaya mong gawin, no? So that will also entail cost. So obviously, mas malaki ang expected cost if you are in a sale of service compared to you are in the sale of product. Okay? Yan yung ating interest expense. Now, how about the entertainment and amusement and recreational expenses? How about interest expenses, no? Sa interest expense naman, sa interest expense naman, if the taxpayer incurs interest expense in connection with the business and at the same time earns interest income subject to 20% final tax, the allowable interest expense shall be reduced by the amount equivalent to the interest income subjected to final tax multiplied by 20%. So, ito, yung actual mo na interest expense, you will deduct here what we call as an interest arbitrage, so that you can get your allowable or deductible interest expense. How do you compute the arbitrage? It is 20% of the interest income subject to 20% final tax. So meaning pag meron kang interest expense at the same time meron kang interest income na subjected to 20% final taxes, you should have an arbitrage. And that arbitrage will lower the actual interest expense. Okay? Bakit? Kasi binabawi niya ng gobyerno, 'di ba? Kasi yung interest income natin subject siya to 20% final taxes. Ang corporate rate ay 25%, 'di ba? Corporate rate is 25%. Yung ating interest expense ay yung interest income natin ay subjected lamang sa 20%. Therefore, may savings tayong 5%. So, ang arbitrage diyan 5% divided by 25%, no, final taxes, no, 25% corporate rate. Therefore, 20% yung arbitrage. Kaya 20% yung i-deduct natin dito. However, some corporations may also be subject to 20%. No? You will learn that one in tax on corporation. No? Some corporation under the create bill, 20% yung kanyang tax rate. So 20% yung kanyang 20% yung kanyang tax rate, then may ano ba, may lugi ba si government? Wala, no? Kasi 20% minus 20% meaning zero. Yung tax na corporate tsaka yung tax na inimpose sa interest income, that is the same at 20%. Okay, now sir, paano pag merong interest expense pero walang interest income subjected to final taxes? Then walang arbitrage. So mangyari dyan, yung actual interest expense mo, ayan din po yung iyong allowable interest expense kasi wala nga tayong arbitrage. Okay? Sige, that is for interest expenses. Also, before I forget, if you have any question and if you don't have time anymore to entertain it, I suggest that the organizers may gather it and maybe submit it to me tomorrow, no? And then I can record a video answering all the questions that you have, no? And then I will send the video to the organizers over the weekend. I hope it's not too late, no? Before your examination date. Okay, by that time, by that way, I can again help you, no? So, kasi parang kulang tayo sa oras, no? Kasi ang haba nga ng income tax, eh. So, ano, ganun na lang yung gagawin natin, ha? So, the organizers may gather questions, then you can send it to me maybe tomorrow morning, if you can gather it after our session. And then after that, I will try to record a video and we'll send it to the organizers within the weekend, answering the questions that you have forwarded to me. Okay, so that's fine with me. Okay, and then lastly, then we have here the net operating loss carryover or the NOLCO. No? Ano ba yung NOLCO natin? Diba? Going back to our income tax model, yan po yung ating gross income minus allowable deduction. If allowable deduction is higher than the gross income, obviously that will incur a loss. So yung loss na iyan ay pwede nating i-carry over sa next year, carry over for the next 3 years, and that will be part of the allowable deduction in the next 3 years. Okay, so if there is a loss, no, gross income and allowable deduction, then pos merong loss, then the 3 years there will apply. So be careful, bibigyan kayo ng teacher niyo ng 5 years dyan na taxable years, tapos yung tanong doon, example 2020 hanggang 2025, no, yung 2021 until 2025, ang tatanungin lang, how much is the taxable income in year 2025? Yung binigay lang, gross income tsaka allowable deduction. Sisyo lang ito kasi doon tayo sa 2025, no? So, difference doon, yun yung sagot. No, be careful. Baka yun sa previous years, merong mga NOLCO. No? Merong mga net operating losses in the previous years that should be deducted in the current year, no, na iyong net taxable income. Okay? Again, that is valid for 3 years. And lastly, we have the charitable and other contributions. Okay, so it is divided into three. We have the deductible in full amount and subject to limit and also non-deductible. It will really depend on the donee, okay, who receives the donation at the same time the purpose, okay, of the donation. If the donee is the government, deductible in full if it is a priority activity for education, health, youth, and sports development or human settlement, science and culture, economic development. So pag ito yung purpose na dinonate siya sa government, deductible in yung donation na iyan, ay deductible in full amount. Pero pag general public purpose ang nakalagay na dinonate sa government, it is subject to limit. So hindi siya automatic ha, pag nilagay doon donation to government, hindi po siya automatic deductible in full. Titingnan mo muna yung kanyang purpose. Okay? Accredited non-government organizations, we have here also the purpose. Pag ganito yung purpose na pag-donate doon sa accredited NGOs, it is deductible in full amount. If the NGO is not accredited or any other domestic corporation, very specific lang din po yung mga purpose ng donation for it to be a deduction subject to limit. Okay, a deduction subject to limit. If that is not within the purpose mentioned here, therefore it is non-deductible. Okay, so talking about limit, ano ba yung limit natin? No? So when it comes to charitable contributions. It will depend na kung sino ang nag-donate. Kung ang nag-donate ay individual, 10% no ng taxable income before donation. If ang nag-donate ay corporation, 5%. So ganito yan, no? For example, you have your gross income, you have your allowable deduction excluding, okay, excluding donations. So you have your net taxable income excluding donations. That will exclude all the donations, even in deductible in full at saka subject to limit. Kasi ito yan yung babasehan mo ng 10% at saka ng 5%. Before deducting the donations, again, all donations, whether it's deductible in full or deductible subject to limit. So you have your net taxable income. Okay, it is your charitable and other contributions.
Certificate of Appreciation is awarded to Dr. Cedric Val R. Naranjo, CPA, in recognition of your valuable contribution as one of our honored facilitators in CAF Review Finals, given this 30th day of June in the year of our Lord 2021. Signed by Mr. Aaron S. De Los Reyes, Counselor, Head, Academics Department, Mr. Aaron Paul M. Garing, Student Council President, Professor Mark Anacito R. Perlas, CPA, Student Council Advisor, and Professor Julieta G. Ponte, CPA, PhD, Dean of the College of Accountancy and Finance. Again, thank you very much.